Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I am here with Michael Katz from the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal in Tupelo, Mississippi. And Michael got to see practice today. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's like every time we go there, we get to see a little bit more. I think we were there for a good half an hour, 45 minutes today. So we started outside, and then the lightning started, so we quickly moved inside. So the indoor practice facility came in clutch today.
Now, not to make fun of anything, but was there some hilarious old people running?
There were a lot of people running. It was actually really funny because they're stretching, and they do that for a while to get warmed up. And Lane wasn't even out there yet. Lane was not out there yet, and he walked out of his office, and it's like he felt the rain, and he like turned around and was like, "We're going inside." So that was a couple of us saw, and we just started laughing. It was perfect.
Yeah, it's outstanding. And other than the weather being messed up, because tomorrow will be the bad weather day for me. I'm always a day behind Mississippi. But other than that, what did you learn from practice today?
So, today, there's so many moving parts and new numbers and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of try to break it down. Like I try to look at a like particular position group on a different day and just see like what I can get. Because otherwise there's too much happening. And I don't like to walk that much.
Tell me it was the linebackers today.
Because no, it was not today, but they were in the vicinity. I was looking at the defensive backs more than anything today because I had asked who we were going to be speaking to, and it was Trey Amos. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to see like where he's at and who else is out there and all that kind of stuff. And he's matching up with Trey Harris, and that's got to be really, really the iron sharpens iron thing. That's two really good ones. And so I was looking at defensive backs today, and it's a deep room, and I don't think they have everybody that they are going to have, just again with spring injuries and whatnot. But I was looking at that just because there are a lot of new faces. I mean, yeah, there's Trey Washington and there's John Saunders, and but you look at you've got a bunch of new cornerbacks, Trey Amos, Turnage. You got a bunch of new safeties. So I was sort of looking to see how that looks. And again, you take the rotations and stuff with a bit of a grain of salt right now, because I think everybody's trying to figure out what they have. But, I know we've talked a lot, or Lane has talked a lot about needing to, get more athletic and bigger in the front seven. But, when you look at guys like Trey Amos, like those are guys that improve the physicality and the eyeball test on the back end too. And you can tell from those guys that they are built a little bit different.
And one little interesting thing is they asked Trey Amos, is like, what do you do well? What were you brought here to do and all that? And he's like, press man. That's what I'm here for, press man. And that's interesting because last season they were like a 80%, 90% zone team. So that tells me the Zach Arnett coming in, the B Brown coming in, the defense is going to look a little bit different this fall.
Yeah, and he did not hesitate when asked. I think the question was something to the extent of, what's your self-scouting report? And he was like, they brought me in here to play press man. That's something that we haven't seen much of from Ole Miss. So, I think it's when you can have a bunch of guys that can do a lot of different things. And again, Lane was really complimentary of his talent and just the sort of things that he brings to the table from an athleticism standpoint, from a mentality standpoint. And he was really impressive to talk to today as well. So, I know he's got a lot of playing experience at a couple different places. I think he's going to play a really big part in what they're doing this year.
Yeah, and while you were down looking at the DBs, I mean, there's a couple of players, and they're for various reasons you might not be able to see them, but like Amorium Walker, he was the combine guy coming in. Everybody talked about all of his stats. Did you see anything from him?
He might have been on the other side of the field. I was not able to, because he was one I was looking for too. And then, of course, there's the scramble to try to figure out who is what number and who's changed numbers and all that kind of stuff. So I did not see him today. Today was a lot of, just, again, everybody's getting reps right now, but, saw a lot of him and Turnage. And we're really looking at the safeties a little bit too.
Yeah, and you have like Key Lawrence and Lewis Moore and Yam Banks. Did you notice Yam Banks? That would be a one.
I did not. I saw a lot of Key Lawrence today though, because I remember I looked down. I was like, "Who's number 12?" I was like, "He's moving around," and so he was one that stood out today.
It's really interesting because Lane Kiffin in his press conference talked about, "Hey, we brought Trey Amos in to the defensive back room," and he made a point to say, and I've said this many times on my show, the baby of Nick Saban was the defensive backs. And anytime you can get an Alabama defensive back, that guy can play football. And Trey Amos is absolutely living up to that bill, of judging by the Ole Miss football social media account.
Yeah. So, I think Lane sort of started it with, for a while, like you always knew if you were hiring somebody from that coaching staff, you knew exactly what you were getting. And now in this era of transfer portal where there's players moving around, you know exactly what you are getting from particularly a defensive back who's played under Nick Saban, because yes, they're going to be well-trained and that they're going to have the fundamentals down. You know that they're probably going to be really good athletes. But you also know that, like you said, like they're just going to be really good football players and they're going to play the right way or the way that they want them to. I think mentality is a big part of it. And so when you have a guy, again, if you can play under Nick Saban, I think you can. I think the idea is that this guy, he's going to be fairly low maintenance. You know that you're going to be getting a guy who can just flat out play. And Trey Amos mentioned that the defensive that he ran last year was pretty similar to what Pete Golding runs. And obviously Pete Golding was at Alabama for a while, and Pete Golding had a little bit of a relationship with Trey Amos. He said that he tried to get him in the portal when he entered coming out of Louisiana Lafayette. Obviously he ended up going to Alabama, and when Pete was already at Ole Miss, so he got him this time. But I think that when scheme matters too, and so that this guy can play in the system that you're running because he's basically already run it before. But two, you're getting a guy who's going to know the fundamentals, and he's going to be in a pretty good place mentally too. The Nick Saban thing, it's real. I think when you can get somebody who passes, that test, it's hard to say no to that.
Yes, my show tomorrow morning is going to be essentially the whole first segment is about how Nick Saban's fingerprints are all over this 2024 Ole Miss football team.
100%. I mean, it's Lane has talked a lot about what Nick Saban meant to him from just sort of a redemption arc standpoint in terms of getting his career kind of back on track after everything that happened at USC. And it's one thing to say that you learned things from the guy, but he's really taking everything into account that he's learned. And it's the way he hires, it's the people he hires, it's the sort of it's the focus on defense now. It's the way that he evaluates players and that they evaluate players. It's not just lip service. I mean, he learned a lot, and especially in this era of college football, I think that the things that he learned under him really go a long way.
Well, one thing he absolutely learned from him is the importance of a player personnel department, in which Nick Saban famously, like 15 years ago, was running a player personnel department when everybody else was just one ops guy. I remember when I was at Ole Miss stationed there, we had a guy named Kent McLeod, and he was the lone recruiting. He was the recruiting department. Everything that was in there. Well, now they're just building up and up and up. And Lane Kiffin has taken this player personnel department when everybody else is trying to figure out NIL. He was such ahead of the game there. He's playing 4D chess right now to where he He has a general manager from Texas, which is a big money type deal. He has hired a general manager from SMU who is known for his transfer portal evaluations. He is bringing in a capologist. Yes, you heard me correctly, from the San Francisco 49ers and the St. Louis Rams. And then you have Kelvin Bolden, which his skill set, I don't think people realize, but he is in this era to where you don't necessarily have to be an on-field coach to recruit, which that rule is coming. I think he is going to become potentially the Derek Nix of this Ole Miss coaching staff. I mean, I think Lane is playing 4D chess with the player personnel right now.
Yeah, that was something that we brought up today because there was a report that they had hired Mike Williams, who obviously had previous experience with the 49ers and the Rams. And we asked him about that. And he obviously, he confirmed the hire. And then he went into sort of the logic behind why you hire somebody with the sort of skill set that he has. And he brought up that, and he prefaces a lot of things with, college football's changing and you got to be ready for it. And you might not like it, but you have to work with what it is. And he understands that evaluations and looking at what you have and what is potentially out there and weighing how NIL money is best spent is a part of this now. It's the same thing that a team does in the NFL when looking at free agents, and is what we have better than what's out there, or will we be better using our money on the stuff that's out there in the transfer portal? And so it was really interesting to hear him say it because I think that we all have probably thought about, well, it's got to be pretty crazy for coaches to not only be have to recruit their own team, but to also be looking at their team and seeing where it's at and how do you get better. And to hear him talk about it, I thought was really enlightening.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Michael Katz, Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. What do you got going on at the DJ this week?
It is for better or worse. There's a lot of Ole Miss baseball going on right now. So, there's a game tonight, and then there's a big series against Arkansas. They got to get back on track. It was this last weekend was not a good one for them. So a lot of that. We've got a lot of player interviews coming up for football. We're getting 2 days of availability for interviews and 3 days of observational practice stuff. So, my story today was Trey Amos. I'm going to have one on Caden Lee tomorrow. I think we're going to get some new players again on Thursday. So, there's a lot of meeting the team.
Yes, and if Ole Miss baseball cannot get right, and they have number 1 Arkansas this weekend, we are officially in the off season.
Yeah, it's I've seen the Rebs get hot before, but this is that the Kentucky series was surprising. They've got some work to do. They got some. And again, it does not get easier with Arkansas. And then, of course, Mississippi State coming to town the next week. So big games coming up.
Yeah, some people on Twitter got mad at me because I tweeted out the way that you can control traffic in Oxford, Mississippi for Girl Bowl weekend was what happened in the Kentucky weekend.
Yeah. Well, they've got I think they just lost to Central Arkansas today. At home. So Mississippi State's got its own situation going on. It's an interesting time for college baseball in Mississippi.
Hey, and LSU's going through it too. Before we get out of here, the Madden Jinx version of winning a baseball national championship right now, it is real.
It's crazy. They've lost 4 in a row, I think it is.
Got beat by Southern.
Yeah.
In Alex Box.
Yeah. No one is safe.
Yeah. It's getting everybody. Anyway, thank you, Michael. We'll talk to you next week, bud.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.